All right, we ready to get started then at 7:05. So for everybody that's joining us, hello, I'm Janet Popielski. Thank you for joining us for the Issue 4 Town Hall. I am one of the founding members of Represent Brecksville. I'm also the person that initiated the petition to put Issue 4 on the ballot. I'm a longtime Brecksville resident. I live in Echo Hills on Gatewood with my husband and my 3 kids. There are several other people here that are joining me tonight to talk about Issue 4 and to answer the questions that we've been compiling through our website and also on social media. We're recording this and we will be posting it on our website along with the written answers to all the questions. We do have a chat available where you can submit questions, but we have a lot to cover this evening, so we may not get to those, in which case we will go ahead and put the answers to those on our website as well. So let's jump right in and just give me one moment while I share my screen. So the first basic question that we wanted to cover tonight is, what is Issue 4? And Issue 4 is a nonpartisan city charter amendment to update Brecksville City Council structure from 7 at-large council persons to a hybrid 4 ward-based 3 at-large. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Brecksville City Charter, it's essentially the constitution for a city. It's the same type of thing. So it defines the organization, the powers, the essential function, and the powers, functions, and essential procedures for the city. And there's 2 ways that it can be amended. An amendment always has to be voted on by the voters. It has to be put on the ballot to be voted on, but that can be put on the ballot in 2 ways. One is through City Council, and the other is by a citizens petition initiative, which is what we've done. Some people have asked if this was rushed, and I can assure you that it wasn't. We've been talking about this for about a year now, actually for over a year, and really started to research it in January. We looked at what other communities were doing in their city charters, and we also hired an attorney who specializes in municipal law to put the amendment together. Then we passed around the petition and got over 700 signatures. We did this per all the requirements of the Ohio Constitution, the city charter, and the Secretary of State, and we met all the deadlines required by the Board of Election to put it on the ballot. The sections of the city charter that Issue 4 will amend are Section 4 that lays out the structure of council, the number, terms, and qualifications. Section 8, which deals with the nominations, and then Section 7 for the nominations, and Section 8, which is about the recall. And this is all because this pertains to the structure of council and the changeover to the ward system. So how they're nominated and how they're recalled. To read the full charter amendment, you can visit our website at representbrecksville.com. On the left-hand side, you can go to the ballot information. And there you can find the full amendment language. First, you'll actually see the exact language that's on the ballot. This is a summary that was written by the law director and approved by the Board of Elections. If you scroll down, you'll see where exactly that it is on the ballot, which is on page 3, right next to the library issue. And then if you continue on our website past that, you can find the full charter amendment language and review all the different sections of the charter that would be amended by Issue 4. So what is Represent Brecksville? Represent Brecksville is a citizen-led grassroots group formed to initiate and pass Issue 4. We're also a registered issue PAC because we're required to by law. We can't campaign or donate or anything unless we register as a PAC. But we're also your friends and your neighbors. We come from all across the town, and 23 people collected over 700 signatures to put this on the ballot. The map that you see before you is where all the different people who signed our petition were from, and you can see that it was distributed throughout the entire city. Over 80 individuals have donated to our campaign, and numerous other people have volunteered in a variety of ways. So what is a ward? A ward is an optional geographical division for a city for administrative and representative purposes, similar to how cities are divided for voting precincts. It's created for the purpose of providing more direct representation from which a single ward-based council person is elected. It's more common in cities with populations over 10,000, which Brecksville has over 13,700 citizens now. Out of the 34 cities there's 34 cities in Cuyahoga County that have more than 10,000 people, and out of those, 29 have wards. Some of those and some in other neighboring counties are Solon, Hudson, Bay Village, Aurora, Broadview Heights, and North Royalton. We reached out to one of the ward council members in Broadview Heights to ask for his take on having wards in your community. Brian Wolf, who's the Ward 2 councilman and was elected back in 2013 and is still on council, said that having ward representatives gives you a go-to person that knows you're part of the city. Ward representatives usually get the most contact from their ward rather than residents reaching out to at-large members. You're guaranteed to have someone in your region of the city. Without ward representation, you could end up with all council members from the same neighborhood. Ward representation ensures that there's fair coverage for the whole city. Currently, the way that our city council is structured is that we have 7 at-large members. So they're voted on by every resident of the city, every voter. But it also means that they can all come from one neighborhood, theoretically. Every 2 years, you elect 4 members of council. The 3 highest vote getters get a 4-year term, and the lowest vote getter gets a 2-year term. And that's why there's 4 up in every election. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ted to answer the next question.
Okay, the next question is, why now, and has this ever been tried before? As far as why now is concerned, I think more of the question should be why not now? And what's really generated this more than anything else is population change. When we had less than 5,000 people, well, City Council was formed in 1957. And back then we had less than 5,000 people in the city of Brecksville. So you had 7 at-large city council persons, and each of them represented about 5,000 people. Now we're going closer towards 14,000 people. So each of those persons represents approximately 14,000 people. So that's a lot of people for one person to be representing. And as was previously spoken, when cities get larger, they tend to move into a ward type of representation. So with ward council people, we would have more engagement. We would have by citizens. We would have more. We would have city council persons who are closer to their the people that they represent, and that would allow, I think, for more engagement, for people to get more involved in city government, which is a good thing. And for people to care more about city government because they'd be closer to it, because they would have a representative that represents them specifically. And I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people, including myself, who have had stories where we didn't have a go-to person to go to, and we suffered because of it. So if we have wards, we'll have that representation. With regards to the history of this, as was previously represented, this can only come about by either a citizens initiative, which is what we are doing right now, or by a recommendation from the Charter Review Commission. The Charter Review Commission is appointed by the mayor, and every 10 years reviews our city charter. And in 1993, 2003, 2013, the question of wards came up, and every single time it was just shot down without open discussion, without public discussion, without anybody even knowing outside of that small circle that had happened. So why now, and has it ever been tried before? No, it's never been tried before. Why now? Why not now? So I'd like to pass it on now to Mary.
Thank you, Ted. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Gunsler, and I live at 9494 River Birch Run. And the question that I will be answering is, how do you answer the question, not my ward, not my problem? When wards are adapted, 4 ward council persons will serve on council committees, just like current at-large council do today. By virtue of various committee memberships, ward council will be representing not only their own area's concerns, but the concerns of all citizens. It will still take a majority on council to pass legislation, so ward council members' incentive is to work with all members to ensure progress. Now, one example of this, of council not taking responsibility for a problem, was experienced several years ago by residents on Sherwood Trail. A number of them were cited by the city for problems with their driveway aprons. Residents were required to replace these aprons at their own cost and with no warning. In cities with wards, this is an example of when it is beneficial to call your ward council person who can help you discuss this with the city. Sherwood Trail residents did reach out to a council member who lived nearby, but were told it was out of his hands. If that council person was more dependent on their vote, he would have had greater motivation to intercede with the city and help these residents, even if it was just to negotiate on extending the deadline. And the next question will be read and answered by Keith.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. And the question I'll be answering is it more likely for a ward council seat to be uncontested? And what happens if I get a bad council member? Well, in our research, as it was pointed out that we've done a lot of research, we haven't heard once that ward council seats are more likely to be uncontested than an at-large council seat. So even if there is an uncontested seat, there is a greater chance you will have a better understanding of your ward satisfaction or dissatisfaction with your council member. And it's important to note that issue 4 makes a minor adjustment to the length of terms. So currently 6 of the 7 council seats have 4-year terms, and the one remaining seat, the lowest vote getter every 2 years, gets a 2-year term. So issue 4 is going to change that. So all 7 seats have a 4-year term. So what this will do is give you plenty of time to get to know your council person and see if they are meeting your needs. And if they're not, they can be voted out in the next election. It will actually be easier to vote someone off council since your vote is going to have a greater impact. Wards increase council's accountability to residents. And it should also be noted that Issue 4 amends the section on recalling a ward council member for those extreme instances when the constituents feel that it's necessary to do so. So for the next question, we're going to pass it over to Rebecca Kay.
Everyone, my name's Rebecca Kapoor. I have lived in North Brecksville for about 15 years. And the question I'm answering is, why do you feel a hybrid ward at-large system is better for Brecksville? And can you give specific examples? A hybrid ward at-large system provides each resident with their own ward council person. And a ward council person would be directly responsible for communicating with their ward residents and addressing ward concerns in their specific geographic area. Under the proposed system, which we have a hybrid system, 4 ward council persons, 3 at large. Council retains the 3 at large to be involved with issues that affect the entire city. We have some specific examples of how current council has failed to address resident needs, but where we believe a ward council member would be more responsive and more accountable. Many residents supporting wards have their own stories, and these stories range from simply not knowing who to reach out to on council to having major issues and no one for whom they had an accountable council person. So most recently, a discussion came up on Facebook about large groups of motorcycles and sports cars that regularly speed through the parks along local Brecksville roads, such as Riverview Road, and this is under Brecksville's jurisdiction. So residents living along these routes are very concerned with the noise and safety that are surrounding this activity, but there's been no action by the city to address this problem. A ward council person would be in communication with these residents, could work with the city and the park system to make sure that these concerns are addressed. And for more examples, I'm going to turn it over to Jen Elting. Jen?
Thank you, Rebecca. As she mentioned, my name is Jen Altine. I live on the northeast side of Brecksville in a development called A Stone's Throw. I have lived here for 13 years, but my family has long ties to Brecksville. My grandfather, he built a house here in 1958 in Cambridge Village. But another situation that came to our attention is related to sidewalks. And at a recent city council meeting, there was discussion by the Streets and Sidewalks Committee about how the service department was replacing sidewalks in the Emerald Woods subdivision, where one member of council currently lives, due to damage from trees in the tree lawn. Yet another subdivision, historically Echo Hills, has had several sections of broken sidewalk that resulted from a failing city culvert that the city refused to fix for them. For several years, Echo Hills residents were cited until the HOA finally decided they had just better replace it. At no time did any member of council or the mayor inform Echo Hills HOA that the city will replace sidewalks when the damage results from city responsibility. A ward council person would have been able to help in the situation, help save Echo Hills residents the costs and the effort of sidewalk repair. Another issue that we had was where City Council is continuously allowing developers to avoid putting sidewalks in new developments, or most recently around the new school at Oaks and Bar Roads, where one of my children will attend. Residents, including the families and children, often must walk in the street. And with that, I'll pass it off to Tony for another example.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, my name is Tony Spock, and I have lived on Deer Run in the south side of the town for 11 years. I was a trustee of my neighborhood HOA for 9 years and president for 2 of those. Another example was when a new development was proposed on Snowville Road. City Council put an issue on the ballot to allow the developer to rezone from a R20 to an R8 designation. This enabled the developer to squeeze in a lot more houses than the R20 designation would have allowed. Many residents were against this, but they had no designated voice on council and no council person to advocate on their behalf. Current council will say all rezoning is voted on citywide, but they also know that rezoning issues almost always pass. In fact, based on records from the Board of Elections, 33 of the last 44 times zoning issues have been on the ballot in Brecksville that have passed. You know the difference between R20 and R8? Most people don't. We rely on our representatives to know this and to look out for our best interests. The impact of this change just wasn't understood by most people. When all the trees were suddenly clear cut, a lot of us were really surprised and disappointed. And my final example has to do with flooding. We know this is a persistent problem for many of us in different parts of the city, but my personal experience has been with Vaughan Road and the flooding that closes the roads after heavy rains. This problem has been going on for many, many years. There have been countless calls and emails to City Hall, and to this day, it's still not fixed. This is despite the fact that the city is well aware of it and has even been given money that could have addressed some of these issues. These are all examples of problems affecting only a subset of our system, city. They are not citywide issues, and so the people they affect feel they have run up against a not my ward, not my problem mentality. So maybe if we had wards, someone would instead say, this is my ward and it is my problem. And now for the next question, I'd like to introduce Rebecca C.
Hi, this is Rebecca Ferranti Crocker. I live on Deer Run in Echo Hills. I've been here since 2008. I live here with my husband and 2 boys, one at the high school and one at the middle school. The next question is, won't wards prompt infighting between parts of town? No, quite the opposite. We reached out to Broadview Heights Ward Councilman Brian Wolf, who had been on the council since 2013 regarding this question, and he said, not once. We will work with the administration to help the city, not just each individual ward. We support each other by supporting the ward representative. Ensuring that every neighborhood has a voice on council means our elected representatives will have to work with each other and our citizens to move forward. Many of us have lived in cities with wards and never experienced infighting. Many of us have experienced have experience with a ward council member who advocates for their constituents, which is what we want. Additionally, Brecksville has almost tripled in size since the charter was originally drafted and will be growing still with the addition of residential housing at the VA property, the elementary school sites, and Snowville Road. Brecksville is now big enough to benefit from wards, but not big enough to see the problems and conflicts that large cities like Cleveland face. Now, Janet will bring you the next question.
Thanks, Rebecca. So the next question is, why would I give up 3 of my votes? And this is a very important question because no one should ever be asked to relinquish their ability to determine 3 of the 7 elected council persons without very good reasons behind the change. Although we currently vote for all 7 council members, our individual vote carries very little weight with each of them. Electing a ward council person means each resident's vote will be 1 in 2,500 votes strong, as opposed to the 1 in 10,000 for the current at-large system. It also means that if you don't like your ward council person, it's 4 times easier to get rid of them. Many people have told us that when they look at the ballot, most of the candidates are just names on a page, and they have no real idea who they are or what they stand for. In fact, they shared that many times they only vote for 1 or 2, leaving the rest blank. We reviewed the past 4 council election results available through the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections, and the data reflects this change with high undervotes. So what's an undervote? Currently, every 2 years, as I mentioned, you get to vote for 4 members of council. If you only vote for 1 or 2 of those, your remaining votes are counted towards the undervote. High undervotes are usually a sign that voters aren't familiar with candidates or they are favoring only a few. With wards, you'll know the candidates because they're likely to live nearby and they have a much higher need for your vote. Very quickly, I'm going to share the election results from the past 4 elections with you so that you can see this trend for yourself. So on the screen right now is the 2013 election results, and highlighted here in the red is the undervote, which was 50% of the total votes. So again, these are people that have a ballot, they're actually voting, and they chose 50% of the time to not vote for one of the 4 candidates that was up. In this election, you can see that there were only 4 candidates, so each one was guaranteed a seat. In 2015, that number was 37%. So again, 37% of the time, people that had a vote that were there in the election booth chose not to exercise that. In 2017, that number was 31%. And then finally, in 2019, the number was more reasonable at only 9.7%. But as you can see, we had 10 candidates for 4 seats. In the election, there was a lot of campaigning in that election last year. We're going to share these charts as well on our website if you'd like to look at them further. And with that, I am going to pass it off to Jen.
Thank you, Janet. Another question that we've seen a lot from our neighbors and residents is, I have lived here in Brecksville a long time. I like Brecksville. It is very safe. My trash is picked up, my road is in good shape, and my house values keep going up. Why should I vote for wards? And I agree. Brecksville is an amazing and unique community with great city services, including wonderful safety forces and a very responsive service department. The implementation of wards does not affect any of these services, which are all overseen by our mayor. The other main reasons people move to Brecksville, which we've seen in the recently completed master plan and citizen survey, is access to the parks and the excellent schools, which also will not be impacted by wards. Wards are needed because Brecksville has grown, continues to grow, and change. Many critical decisions are on the development and future of our city are at stake. Some of these issues include the significant increase in traffic on Oaks Road resulting from the new elementary school, the potential for increased crime and traffic from the new planned entrance and exit ramps to 77 at Miller Road, as well as the yet to be built hotels and retail at the VA site, and the future use of Central School, Highland School, and Chippewa School properties. Change is coming to Brecksville, and it will touch on the lives of every single resident, you and me included. Wards will bring you a responsive, accountable, elected representative looking out for you. And with that, I'll pass the next question over to Ted.
The question I have is related to the whole Four Seasons debacle that we experienced not that long ago. And so the question is does this move for wards, is what we're doing, have anything at all to do with the Four Seasons event? And the answer is absolutely, categorically not. It has nothing to do with that. We have no way of guessing what a ward hybrid representation would have done or decided with regard to Four Seasons. But one thing that we can speculate on is that with a ward hybrid form of representation, that there wouldn't have been the kind of divisiveness, the kind of negative emotion that occurred during that, because with this kind of a representation, people would have had a chance to talk to their ward council persons and to chime in and to get impact opinions and thoughts from their ward person and vice versa. So with that kind of dialogue and again engagement, I think that people would have felt more comfortable with the decision with regard to the Four Seasons thing. One other point, though, that can be made is that the fact that our at-large city council was so blindsided by what the city's reaction would be to the Four Seasons decision just shows how out of touch city council is with the people of Brecksville. They had no idea what our thoughts were. They weren't talking to us. They weren't listening to us. No engagement whatsoever. So because of that, they were blindsided and had no idea what that was going to cause. So that's another good reason why we should have a ward representation in the city of Brecksville. I'm going to now pass this once again on to Mary.
Thank you, Ted. The question I'll be reading and answering tonight is, if you're not happy with current council, why don't residents run themselves or vote out current council members? When a resident wants to run, the answer is cost and time commitment. An at-large campaign roughly costs $5,000 plus because you are campaigning to the entire city. A single advertisement alone in the Brecksville magazine runs $420. And if you want to mail a postcard to every single resident, the postage alone is $3,500. Campaigning to a specific ward is far less expensive and invites more willing participants to run. Campaigning to a population of 10,000 registered voters as opposed to a ward of 2,500 voters would take far less time. Our current at-large structure does not promote neighborhood interaction, accountability, and infusion of new ideas. With wards, a council member will need your vote much more because they have a vested interest in making sure your concerns and ideas are taken into consideration. And the next question will be read and answered by Keith.
And I will properly introduce myself this time as Keith Richardson, living on the southwest side in Valley Brook Estates with my wife and two young and wonderful daughters. And the question is, are ward council people more prone to influences by special interest groups? Frankly, no. By increasing the accountability of council members to their constituents, it decreases the likelihood of special interests influencing how decisions are made by city council. The cost of running at-large campaigns, as Mary just pointed out and detailed, is prone to money from donors looking to get members elected to serve their own interests, such as developers, because the costs are high. We've reviewed the financial filings of many past candidates from the Board of Elections website, and typically citywide campaigns for new candidates especially cost, as Mary put it, $5,000 and up. So most at-large candidates must ask for donations to help fund their campaigns, and the more money they need, the more likely they are to be influenced. And additionally, the more money that is needed, the less likely people are to run for a council seat. So with the ward system, the barrier to entry is lower, making it more open to new candidates. And for the next question, I'm going to pass it back to Rebecca C.
Hi again. The next question is, if issue 4 passes, how and when will the wards be phased in? The details are included in the full charter amendment of issue 4, which is on our website that Janet pointed out earlier. After issue 4 passes, City Council will divide the city into 4 wards. The wards must be as equal in population as possible, and requirements are included in the amendment in order to make sure wards cannot be gerrymandered. In the November 2021 election, the 4 ward council members will be elected since 4 council seats are up for election at that time. In 2023, the 3 at-large members will be elected. This transition means all current council members will fulfill their full terms. And Jen Edding will bring you the next question.
Thank you, Rebecca. So the next question that we're hearing a lot from folks is that what happens if no one runs for a ward council seat? And the exact same thing happens as it happens right now. So if that occurs and no one runs for a ward council seat, the process laid out in the city charter would be followed, which is for council to appoint the council member, just like what happened a couple of months ago in August of 2020, when an appointment was made by city council to fill the vacant council seat. If council fails to do so within 30 days, then the mayor may appoint the council person. The big difference is that the person appointed to the seat would have to reside within that ward, which means that you are still assured representation with the new hybrid system. And with that, I'll pass the next question over to Rebecca Kapoor.
So I'm going to ask Janet to share her screen because this is a longer question, so we wanted to post it so that people can read it in full, maybe while I'm sharing the answer. Thank you. So the question, for 14 years, I served on Brecksville City Council. During that time, I received questions and requests from all over the city. No one was left out. In each election, it seemed that the most qualified candidates were elected no matter where they lived. Have you considered that because more council representatives live in the southeast quadrant of the city, that these are the most qualified and the people who chose to run for office and do that work necessary? So my question is, by going to wards, doesn't it make it easier for a less qualified individual to be elected? So the qualifications to run for city council are in the city charter, and they are very straightforward. You must have been a resident for 2 years immediately prior to the date of the election. You cannot hold any other municipal office or municipal employment. You cannot directly or indirectly solicit, contract for, receive, or be interested in any profit or emolument from or on account of any contract, job, work, or service with or for the city. The only thing the wards amendment will change is to add that a ward council member must have been a resident of their ward for 2 years as well. In regards to whether the most qualified people who chose to run are from one particular part of town, we find that there are very well educated and intelligent people who live throughout Brecksville, and they are not limited to one part of town. We do think the high cost and time commitment for running for an at-large seat can result in many excellent candidates not choosing to run. This was evident when over 20 applications were received for the single open seat on council in August of this year, with numerous strong contenders. Clearly, there's high interest from well-qualified Brecksville residents to be part of council. And our next question, which is kind of a long one, so I think Janet's going to put it up on a slide. That's going to be read by Tony.
Thank you. So this next question is, how will having wards represent all the people of Brecksville? If elected, a ward candidate represents and remains accountable only to the electors within their home ward, correct? Shouldn't public officials represent and be accountable to the entire city, especially in a small community like Brecksville, and not just one part? What would prohibit one ward representative from negotiating with another ward representative and select others on council just to get what they want and possibly not what the entire community needs? What would prevent quid pro quo deals between wards from happening? So first, I'd like to say that currently council, even though they are at large and supposed to represent everybody, actually are not that responsive to the residents of Brecksville. This is exactly what prompted myself and my fellow residents to start this initiative for a hybrid ward at-large system. Wards create a path through which the entirety of council represents all the residents geographically. It's an attempt to engage all the electorate rather than just the current in-group. In other words, a small group of people that seem to have a leg up for appointments and even council seats. As citizens of this community, we want more engagement with our government. As far as quid pro quo deals, these tend to happen in large cities with more varied and more numerous wards, big cities like Cleveland or Chicago. There are 7 members total on council, with 3 being from other wards, 3 being citywide at large, plus we have a mayor and the city staff who will work under him. With these checks and balances in place, no single council person can go rogue. Everyone has to work together to make sure everyone's needs are met. Additionally, ward council members still take an oath to represent all the city and still serve on the same citywide committees exactly as they do today. The main impact of wards in Brecksville will be to increase council accountability and resident engagement and improved clarity in communication to and from the citizens of our city. And that concludes it. Thank you for joining us tonight. As Janet mentioned, the video and all the questions will be posted on our site and our Facebook page. If you have additional questions, please email them to us and we'll answer them on our site, representbrecksville.com, or via our Facebook page. Thank you, and vote for issue 4.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.